Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show. Xingchen is not used to the opponent's faults either. Tell the other party directly, there is no need to talk. Looking back, I can go to the accessories store to order a working engine, but it costs a little more money, and the safety is much higher. The other party's second boss probably also knew the truth about the engine. Seeing that Xingchen didn't buy it, he didn't get angry, but put on an attitude of being willing to negotiate. Stardust actually had some intentions to buy this engine, but the other party's asking price was too high, so he gave up. At this time, since the other party showed an attitude of being able to talk, it is natural to talk about it. After several rounds of tit-for-tat negotiations, Stardust and the other party reached a mutually acceptable condition. This power engine exchanged 2,200 vegetable leaves from Stardust. It is said that the price is a bit high, but the suitable power engine is not easy to find. The other party also told Xingchen an unspoken rule. That is, there are certain restrictions on private spaceship construction on this planet. Not that you can buy things with money. Of course, there are no such regulations on the surface, but in fact, if you want to buy some new sets of important components such as power engines and main control system integration, those merchants will not sell them to you. This unspoken rule was probably created by some vested interests on this planet, in order to maintain their own status. However, in actual implementation, some merchants implement this regulation more strictly, while others implement it more loosely. But the team that exchanged the power engine with Stardust spent a lot of effort for the parts in the engine, and couldn't buy suitable accessories from those merchants. Seeing that after so long, they couldn't gather suitable accessories, the people there gave up. It happened that Xingchen wanted these things, so he exchanged them for the scarce greens. Stardust found out about this, and felt a little impatient about it. But the accessories have been collected for so long, and I have spent too much time and energy, so I can't give up halfway. Besides, with my own strength, if I can't build a spaceship and run out, there is not much development on this planet. Anyway, let's take a step and see one step at a time. In case there is no way to build a spaceship when the time comes, then save some RAL and buy a ticket to go out. It's better than staying here and dawdling around. Stardust and the other party agreed on the amount of exchange. However, there is still some discrepancy in the time of the exchange. The other party wants to complete the exchange earlier, and plans to divide it into 4 times, with 500 to 600 vegetable leaves each time, but Xingchen can't afford so much at a time. Although the quantity of each batch is more than this number, Huff has a fixed demand. There, Xingchen's biggest source of income is now, and he doesn't want to cut it off. After thinking about it, Xingchen gave the other party 200 vegetable leaves in each batch, and exchanged them in 11 times. The other party thought about it and agreed. At this point, the transaction is established. The agreement has been agreed upon here, and no one will violate it, otherwise everyone will no longer believe what they say to you, so there will be no way to gain a foothold here. And the other party is also a big force. If Xingchen doesn't want to fulfill the agreement, the other party will definitely come to find trouble, and no one on Xingchen's side will be willing to intervene in this matter. That Stardust is really cool. So, the other party handed over the engine to Xingchen, made an appointment for the delivery, and went back. Stardust has gained a lot this time. A power engine accounts for quite a large proportion of spaceship accessories. Of course, many parts of this engine need to be replaced. Xingchen asked De Huang to write down the types of parts needed, so that he can go to the store to buy them in the future. Of course, you can go shopping. Whether you can buy it or not is up to you. After finishing this matter, Xingchen looked around for several storage areas, picked up some accessories and went home. This time an exchange agreement was reached, but the amount of vegetables in the house was still not enough. No way, let's increase the number of plants by 10 more. Before the increased vegetables grow, Huff's supply may have to decrease a bit. After arranging things at home, Xingchen returned to school and started his normal routine. Now Xingchen eats 2 meals a day as spiritual meals, and usually trains very hard, so judging from Da Huang's calculation data, Xingqian will reach level 8 in more than 10 days. Of course, there is still a long way to go from tier 9. Not to mention crossing to the prefecture level. Now that there is a power engine, Stardust's main goal is to restore the power engine as soon as possible. There are still 42 parts in this engine that need to be replaced, and Stardust doesn't have any suitable parts on hand right now. I can only ask Huff if there is any stock when selling vegetables. There are 3 accessories available in Huff's store, and there will be no more. Stardust asked Huff to ask in his channel to see if he could accept some. Anyway, Stardust still has some RAL in his hands now, so it's okay if the accessories are a little more expensive. Huff also agreed. In addition, Stardust went to Gillen's black shop, where Stardust found 5 suitable engine parts. In addition, Stardust also placed a purchase order. The next engine parts will be a bit troublesome, otherwise the gang of scavengers wouldn't have been unable to collect them for so long. Next, Xingqian will go home every 8 days to complete the exchange agreement. In addition, when other people have accessories, Xingqian also uses some older vegetable leaves to exchange. Gradually, Xingqian has nearly 1,000 accessories in his hand. And that's not including that power engine. Another month or so later, when Huff was buying Stardust's vegetable leaves, he let go, packed up the spaceship accessories he took at a loss last time, and handed them over to Stardust. There are still more than 390 pieces of these accessories, and Huff has only sold a few pieces after so long. There is no way, he priced too high before, no one else wanted the goods, and now only Xingqian is willing to ask for such a large batch of goods. Huff's shipment also includes the spacecraft's main control system. Of course it's only a part of it, but the most important part is still there, which makes Xingqian very happy. However, in order to buy this batch of accessories, the more than 100,000 RALs that Xingqian had saved before, lost 70 to 80% in an instant. Fortunately, those green vegetables can bring Xingqian tens of thousands of reals in income every 8 days. As long as Xingqian is given a little more time, more than 100,000 reals can be saved again. In the following time, Stardust collected hundreds of suitable accessories one after another. But the components of the engine system don't have much to gain. It seems that the unspoken rules do exist. However, Xingqian knew that Huff had an acquaintance in the ship repair yard, so after spending some money, the little boss in the ship repair yard used his relationship to slowly help Xingqian buy it through certain channels. Some useful engine parts. But with this way of buying, you can only buy 7 or 8 pieces a month. It will take at least 3 or 4 months before the engine is finally ready. Stardust has no other way out, so he can only wait. Besides, Xingqian doesn't have much lol on hand now, and he can't do it if he wants to buy accessories in large quantities. After so many days, Xingdust finally reached the human level 8 strength. But going up, it's not so easy. Many of Stardust's classmates actually stayed at this level. Except for a few students with strong family power, they only reached the 9th rank. However, it took them no less than a year to rush from the 8th level to the 9th level. The main reason why everyone needs to spend so long to reach the level is that the planet's spiritual energy is insufficient. The psychic energy that everyone needs for cultivation comes from the spiritual food and spiritual fruit imported from outside. Among those things, apart from the low-grade spiritual meals that can be bought, mid to high-grade spiritual meals and spiritual fruits are all controlled commodities, and even if you have money, it is difficult to buy them. Even in order to prevent people from making aircraft to smuggle such things outside, there are many restrictions on the spaceship accessories here. But there are policies and there are countermeasures. After being suppressed for a long time, there will always be people who want to find some loopholes to exploit. Stardust chatted with Huff once while selling things, so he knew some inside news about this. There are still some small forces on this planet who are outside the management. After years of operation, many of those forces have obtained small spaceships for smuggling, but this kind of smuggling is also unstable. Because the performance of the spaceships made by these forces is not very reliable, they may lose contact at some point, and it is not known whether the pilot directly took the spaceship and ran away, or suffered some accident. However, as long as the spaceship flies a dozen or 20 times steadily, it will greatly earn back its capital. So there are still many small forces doing this. Stardust didn't care much when he heard this. He was different from those forces. If he had the chance to go to an alien planet, he might not choose to come back. After all, there is nothing to miss here. Now in Shinchan's house, a batch of vegetables mature every 8 days. Except for the green vegetables exchanged with another group of scavengers, most of the rest were handed over to Huff to sell. Stardust saved another 50,000 to 60,000 rals. In order to gather suitable accessories as soon as possible, Shinchan placed some missing important parts on the purchase order again with Huff and Gilland. Of course, if you place an order like this, the price will be much higher. But Shinchan couldn't help it. He tried to order from other channels, but no one took the order. At this time, Huff has good news. The little head of the ship repair yard said that someone went to repair a small spaceship, and many parts needed to be replaced. That little boss added some parts that Stardust wanted into this batch of parts and ordered them together. In this way, the supervision is bypassed, and a large number of accessories that are difficult to obtain are directly ordered. After doing this, the parts in Shinchan's power engine are complete. Of course, these parts are also second-hand, but the condition is not bad. As far as Stardust is concerned, being able to get such an accessory is already pretty lucky. As the saying goes, good things come in pairs, and this power engine just got all the accessories. Another good news came from Gilland. Someone wants to sell a life support system for a small spaceship. This system also includes nearly 200 parts. It is something for the relatively low-strength crew members to stay on board to save their lives. Just like Stardust, if there is no such thing on the spaceship, it probably won't last half an hour before it will die. If the other party came up with such a set of things, the price was naturally not low. A set of second-hand accessories costs 120,000 laras. This price is acceptable to Shinchan, but he has no cash in hand. However, after negotiating with the other party, the price of this set was reduced to 100,000 lal. Shinchan wanted to buy it, and finally made an agreement with Gillander to pay the bill with red eggplant fruit, and Gillander helped to put up 50,000 yuan for this money. In this way, the accessories in Shinchan's hands are almost more than 2,000 pieces. It's far from the 6,000 or 7,000 parts needed for a small spaceship. But there are many accessories on the spaceship that are not necessary. Like some decorative, covering, and some very useful accessories. They are all things that can be installed or not installed. So now Stardust can actually start assembling the ship. Spaceships are a Stardust dream. Now that the assembly can start now, he won't be waiting. On this school holiday, Shinchan returned home with a big bag of things. In addition to routine food and water. In Stardust's bag, there is still room for rhubarb, and there are many accessories. Back home, Shinchan checked the condition of the vegetables first. Then he plunged into the warehouse, where the spaceship was released. In addition to the spaceship shell in the middle, the warehouse is now filled with various spaceship accessories according to type and function. These are all recent results. The most important thing about a spaceship is the main control and power engine system. Shinchan asked Hua La to find out the various components of the main control system first. This time the vegetable grower has started to work part-time as a takeoff ship assembler again. There are not too many accessories for the main control system, only about 200 pieces, but the importance is of course very high. Wow, it only took an hour or so to get this done. Next is the power engine system. This thing needs to be fixed. Otherwise it will not be fun if the whole engine flies out once it is started. So Hula first disassembled the entire power engine in the open space, and replaced the unusable parts inside. Then put it back together. The assembled engine is carried by the suspension device into the power chamber of the spaceship. Crash guide the entire engine to the installation position. Dang Dang and Bailiu started to join the engine and the hull together with welding tools. This work took a lot longer, and they didn't finish the work until midnight. Stardust naturally didn't wait for them to finish, and went to rest first. After all, robots don't rest, but Stardust gets tired. The next day I have to go to the storage area to pick up the leaks. Of course, when installing the power engine, Stardust also did other work. For example, the entire spacecraft needs to lay some pipelines, which requires the use of various pipes and profiles. Fortunately, these things are sold at the scrap station. With the help of Rhubarb, Stardust only needs to memorize the required sizes and specifications, and go back to the scrapyard to buy it back. Naturally, these things need to be new. With Stardust's current financial resources, it is not a big problem to buy some back. The next morning, Xingchen naturally took his younger brother to the storage area, and at the same time, he also went to the green vegetables used to complete the transaction. When we arrived at the storage area, we caught up with another waste transport ship today. Everyone is still waiting around. Not long after, another member of the scavenger faction came to Xingchen to get the vegetable leaves. Stardust naturally delivered the goods. Then it's time to pick up things. In the past half a day, Xingchen has obtained more than 100 pieces of spaceship accessories. In addition, there are more than 200 kilograms of pure metal. Good luck this time. In the afternoon, Xingchen finished picking up the things in his area. Instead of picking it up in other areas, I went to the waste station, where Stardust purchased a batch of required pipe fittings and profiles. Because these things involve all kinds of energy transmission and have to withstand external forces such as pressure, they are considered special pipe profiles, and the price is not cheap. According to Stardust statistics, this batch of goods cost Stardust more than 30,000 lol. Fortunately, Stardust has made some money recently, so there is enough lol to pay the bill. After taking this batch of things back home, they started to be busy again. Once the main control system of the spacecraft is installed, the power engine is installed, and various pipelines are installed, the entire interior of the spacecraft seems to have a little appearance. Of course, there are still many things missing here. The pipeline distribution area is very large and complicated. This is a very labor-intensive job. But Stardust's robot brother didn't ask for a salary increase or anything. Just slogging away in the spaceship. In fact, there is still an important part of the spaceship that has not been installed. That is the soft layer between the outer shell of the spaceship and the inner support body. This layer of things belongs to the anti-collision protection layer. Of course, it only reduces some impact force. This layer of things is generally not replaced if the spacecraft is scrapped. However, due to the fire and explosion of the spaceship, the soft layer is denatured and can no longer be used, so it needs to be done separately. Because this thing is generally not broken, so the ship repair yard will not have stock. Stardust can only make up his mind on those junk spaceships. Of course, although those spaceships are said to be scrapped, this soft layer is not easy to damage. And this thing has little recycling value, so no one collects it. That is to say, Stardust wanted to save spaceships, so he came up with this idea. As usual, Xingchen walked around the inside of the small spaceship, and Rhubarb calculated the required amount. Turn back to Stardust to find a suitable junk spaceship, and get enough of this thing. In the morning, Xingchen got up, took Dang Dang and Bai Lu, who had been busy all night, and drove out in the hover car. Wow, take care of vegetables at home. Stardust came to yesterday's storage area, and there is nothing to pick up in the site he occupied yesterday. But what Stardust wants today is the anti-collision soft layer installed in the spacecraft shell. This layer is not only anti-collision but also has the function of heat insulation. Xingchen searched around and found a rather large spaceship. The anti-collision soft material in the interlayer of the spaceship's shell is quite good. Although it has been used for a long time, the quality is still good. Now that he found the target, Xingchen naturally asked the younger brothers to step forward. The things taken out are placed on the suspension car. After a while, there was a huge pile on the car. This job didn't take too long. Seeing that it was still early, Xingchen took the younger brothers to a few areas where they hadn't picked up anything, in line with the principle of earning more benefits when they came out. After a busy day, in addition to bringing back a bunch of these soft layers, I also brought back a lot of spaceship accessories and pure metal. In the evening, of course, these guys are still working in the small spaceship. Walla and Dang Dang were busy arranging the pipelines in the spaceship, and Bailu danced with 8 legs, holding pieces of anti-collision, soft materials, to stuff them into the corresponding small spaces in the hull of the ship. At dawn, Stardust comes over to check on the work. I saw that the pipelines in the shell of the small spaceship had been arranged. At the same time, the soft layer that should be filled in the spacecraft shell has also been filled. These little guys are still full of power. Next, according to the installation order of the accessories, Xingchen let Walla and Dang Dang install all the accessories that can be installed on the spaceship, including that life support system. At this time, the spaceship already has some appearance, but after all, there are still some things missing, many functions are missing. You say this thing can fly, and it can indeed fly. But after flying, you don't even know where it is. Anyway, many of those missing parts still need to be collected. After installing all the existing accessories, it has been 2 days, and there is still one more day to end the rest day. But Xingchen didn't have anything to do here, so he asked Hua La to collect the corresponding amount of vegetables and went back to school. This time the red eggplant fruit is still confiscated, but the red eggplant fruit should be ripe on the next day of leave. Stardust went to Huff to sell green vegetables at noon, and then abducted to Gilland, and told him about the red eggplant fruit. Of course it doesn't mean that my red tomato fruit is almost ripe, and I will sell it to you in a few days. It's just that the owner of the last family will have a batch of red tomato fruits arriving in about 8 or 9 days, and they will send them to Gillander at that time. Gillander was naturally very happy when he heard the news. The last batch of red eggplant fruits made him a fortune. This time, there are more goods, which is naturally better. Taking advantage of Gilland's happiness, Xingchen asked him to help find some spaceship accessories. These accessories are necessary, and they are not easy to buy outside. Gilland also readily agreed this time. Xingchen also knew that Gillander had his own channel to open this black shop. Not long after, Gilland got the news that some small powers had shipped some accessories privately, and of course the price was not low. Stardust has released some goods recently, but the funds on hand are not too much. I can only say that he wants a good product first, and the payment may have to wait for a month. Hearing what Xingchen said, Gilland knew that he had no cash on hand. Therefore, Gilland discussed with Stardust to reach an agreement. This is why Stardust will guarantee the supply of red eggplants in the future. The payment for this batch of accessories will be paid by Gilland. When the red eggplants are traded in the future, it will be deducted from the middle payment. Xingchen naturally doesn't care about such terms, anyway, he grows the red eggplants himself, so it's enough to grow a few batches by then. So he agreed. This batch of goods is about 200,000 yuan, including nearly 1,000 pieces of accessories needed by Stardust. These accessories are not so easy to buy. Although they are all second-hand goods, even if there are new ones brought over now, Stardust doesn't have enough money to buy them. Some second-hand goods are good. With this batch of goods, most of Stardust's small spaceship can be assembled. Of course, there is still some distance from safe sailing. The deal was negotiated, and Stardust got these accessories. But while he was happy, Xingchen was still a little puzzled. Because the payment of 200,000 yuan is not a small sum, why did Gilland hand it over to him with confidence? You must know that the relationship between the two is just the relationship between the buyer and the seller. Even if there are more transactions, the relationship is not that close, but Gilland didn't say anything else, so Xingchen naturally wouldn't bother to ask for clarification. What he is most concerned about now is when the small spaceship can be assembled to the extent that it can take off safely. Once again on leave and back home, Zingdust brought back a large number of accessories. In addition, there are some sand, stone and water for growing vegetables. There's no way, Gilland owes a large amount of debt, and Xingchen wants to pay back the money sooner, so he can only grow more vegetables. After several transactions, Xingchen found that it is not difficult for Gilland to sell red eggplants. This time, the amount of the past was large, and Gilland not only didn't feel embarrassed, but was very happy anyway. It seemed that this little thing couldn't help him. In this case, the next batch of red eggplants will be more diverse. Stardust arranges to process another vegetable growing box, this time, the area is not small. Stardust is going to plant 4 waves of red eggplants this time, with 20 seeds in each wave. Calculated in this way, these 80 red eggplants can pay off Gillen's debt. After planning the next planting plan, Shinchan took the younger brothers to the warehouse, where the small spaceship is parked. There are quite a few key components brought back by Stardust this time. As long as these parts are installed, the spaceship can sail in the universe. Of course, due to the lack of some accessories, some functions of this spaceship are still defective, and it is still a bit risky to drive a spaceship to an alien planet now. But Shinchan is not in a hurry to leave. He is going to improve the function of the spaceship again. Shinchan is going to save some more money in his hand, and then set off again. Going to an alien planet is no better than being here, and you can ask for help or borrow money. Once you go outside, there is no telling what kind of situation you will encounter. Arrange for the little brother to assemble the parts inside the spaceship, and Stardust will be on the sidelines to oversee the work. Of course, it doesn't matter whether he, the supervisor, is the same. The younger brothers of Shinchan have been busy all night, and only half of the accessories brought back this time have been installed, and there are more than 200 parts that have not been installed. But now it's daytime, it's time to go to the storage area to have a look. Shinchan got ready for his stuff, and took Dang Dang and Bilyu to the storage area on a suspension car. This time there was no waiting for the transport ship. But the exchange transaction has to go on as usual. In addition, the scavengers in this area also kept some useful spaceship accessories in their hands, and Stardust exchanged them with green vegetable leaves. These things didn't take much time. Shinchan took his younger brother to the previous storage area and went around. Some accessories and pure metals were left out in these areas, and Shinchan took them back. Now the pure metals in Shinchan's hands have almost reached 1 unit. However, because he was not short of money, Shinchan didn't make a special effort to collect it, but only planned to exchange it when he had enough money. After finishing these things, the time is just past the hot period at noon. Stardust didn't go home directly, but went to the scrapyard. This time he didn't take a commuter car, nor did he want to buy planks. The little spaceship is almost ready, but the fuel is still a hassle. These things are strictly controlled on this planet. It doesn't mean that you can refuel if you have a spaceship. So Stardust's small spaceship has to find another way to get enough energy pillars for navigation. This waste station has its own spaceship, although it is not too big, but there are some energy pillars stored in their station. Stardust came here just to use these energy pillars. Of course, it's not that easy. You can't just go and say I want to buy your energy column. How much is one? I'll have 2. They are managed by their superiors, and the energy column is for their own use. If you go over to buy it, others can't sell it. Fortunately, some of Shinchan's father's former colleagues worked at the scrapyard, so Shinchan found a small boss who had a similar relationship, who managed the operation of the equipment. First, Shinchan went over to talk to that little boss privately, and then gave him a box of red eggplants as a gift, which made him let go and sell 2 energy columns. These 2 energy pillars only occupy a small half of the capacity of the small spaceship's energy tank, but it is still possible to let the small spaceship fly for more than 2,000 light years. Of course, the goods are agreed to be sold, but the price is not low. According to Shinchan's understanding, the price of these 2 energy columns is 50% higher than the market price. But it doesn't matter who let Zingdust outside, you can't buy it. Shinchan paid the other party and asked the younger brothers to drive the suspension car to transport the energy column back. Of course, during the transportation of the energy column, something must be covered on it, so that no one can find out that you bought this thing. After returning home, Shinchan asked the younger brothers to install the remaining accessories. Put the energy column aside for now, it's better not to install this thing first. If it is installed, something wrong starts the engine. Wouldn't it just let the spaceship fly around, and it will be scrapped? Hula and Dang Dang have been busy for a long time, and all the accessories that can be installed on the small spaceship have been installed. Most of the accessories of the main control system are complete, and a few missing parts will not affect the normal navigation of the spacecraft. The power engine is fully equipped, but because it is assembled with many second-hand parts, I have to try to see if it can run at full power later. The life support system is complete, but it uses a lower-grade component, so the stability is a little worse, and the acceleration and deceleration should be as slow as possible when the time comes. Some of the remaining system components are incomplete and have poor functions, but it does not affect the navigation. There are also a few missing accessories, so they can't run at all. But it's not a big problem, you can make it up later. After working for so long, this spaceship has taken on some form. Although the overall situation is still a bit short, but Xingchen himself was able to starve to death from empty pockets, and now he is full of food and drink and has assembled a spaceship, which is already very capable. After the little brothers finished assembling, Xingchen asked the small and exquisite to inspect the interior of the entire small spaceship to see if there were any missing parts or parts that hadn't been installed. Of course, Rhubarb followed Xingchen's instructions and inspected the entire spaceship. It's a two-pronged approach to safety. Stardust doesn't want to turn back and sail, and suddenly some part falls off, or some part flies around and smashes the equipment. You must know that it needs to fly faster than the speed of light. Even a small piece of metal shavings can cause major safety hazards. After careful inspection, all possible omissions have been ruled out. Xingchen led his younger brothers out of this warehouse. And let the younger brothers close the door of this warehouse and make concealed devices to ensure that others will not find anything abnormal when entering the passage. Xingchen was afraid that he would go back to school, and if someone else came and stole the spaceship away, his work would be in vain. After finishing a lot of work at home, Xingchen returned to school with the prepared goods the next day. At noon, Xingchen went to Huff's black shop on time. But this time, it's a little different. Huff's shop is a bit messy, as if it has been beaten and smashed. And there are some marks on Huff's face from being beaten. Seeing Stardust enter the door, Huff felt a little nervous. Then he winked at Xingchen. Xingchen's heart skipped a beat. Huff's store has been open for a long time, and I've never heard of anyone coming over to smash it. What's the point today? But Xingchen has already entered the door at this time, it is not good to leave immediately. Xingchen pretended to be more interested in the goods in the store, and looked around. At this time, Xingchen discovered that the back of the black shop is the location of the warehouse, and there seems to be someone walking around inside. Stardust usually comes here, but there has never been such a situation. Seeing this situation, Xingchen also had some guesses in his heart, but he didn't buy or sell goods after he came in, which was a bit suspicious, so Xingchen called Huff and took 2 boxes of small energy bars. The price of energy bars in this kind of black shop is about the same. Xingchen paid the money, turned around and left. Huff didn't call out for Xingchen either. This made Xingchen understand more in his heart. After Stardust left Huff's shop, he didn't go back to school directly, he had to figure out what happened. So Stardust turned around from all the alleys, and turned to Gillen's shop again. There is nothing unusual in Gillen's black shop. However, when Gillen saw Xingchen approaching, he didn't get up immediately, but looked towards the door. Seeing that there was no one else, he came over to greet Xingchen. However, the gestures and expressions of greeting are also the same as greeting ordinary customers. Stardust put the bag on the counter this time. Gylander did not hesitate, directly took the bag and took out the contents. This time the contents of the bag are still the same as usual. There are 7 or 8 spaceship accessories, and a box of red eggplants. Gylander estimated the price of the spaceship accessories, but didn't mention the red eggplant. Seeing that Xingchen agreed to the price, Gillard put the spaceship accessories and red eggplants on the counter, and then handed Xingchen a stack of lol. Naturally, this Tyler is higher than the selling price of the spaceship accessories, including the money for red eggplants. But because Gillen didn't look at the goods, the red tomato fruit in the money is just the average price of the usual price. Seeing Gillen's performance, Xingchen realized that he is not so safe here, so Xingchen didn't ask any more questions, but Gillard gave Xingchen a contact number. Then he pointed to the communicator on his wrist, indicating to use the communicator to contact him later. Stardust nodded, then went out and went back to school. When he arrived at the school, Xingchen didn't directly connect to the number, but sent a request message to that number, asking for a few parts of the small spaceship, which he had placed a list with Gylander. Behind the buying message is my own number. Xingchen believed that if this number belonged to Gylander, then he would know that it was him who sent the message. Not long after, someone at Stardust's number sent a communication request. After Stardust got connected, it turned out that the other party was Gyland. Gyland told Stardust to be more careful recently, someone is watching him. Then said the reason. It turns out that recently, Huff has produced a lot of green vegetables, and the shipment is continuous, which has attracted some people's attention. In the past, the vegetable business was transported by the high level of this planet through periodic transport spaceships, and then resold to various forces. Then go retail. Later, some small forces also used small spaceships to transport some privately and sell them. However, this kind of smuggling is often unstable and often out of stock. But the green vegetables sold by this Huff have never been unstable, and the green vegetables are relatively fresh. Now there are two large and small forces eyeing this area. Because the background of Huff was not deep enough, someone gave him a clean-up. Fortunately, Huff didn't reveal too much, and the other party only knew that someone was selling vegetables at his place regularly. I don't know who it is. Now there is someone watching at Huff, just trying to find out who is selling the goods. You must know that there must be a corresponding channel for such a stable transaction, that is, someone is smuggling here from an alien planet, and the local forces don't know who it is. The current situation is that the local forces want to find out who is smuggling, and it is still so stable. If this line is accepted, no matter who accepts it, it will make a lot of money. There were also people from Gyland who came to find him, but Gyland himself had some background, was strong enough, and had many friends. The other party didn't want to fight recklessly, so he didn't do anything, but sent someone outside his shop to watch. At present, it seems that Stardust is relatively safe here. However, Gyland learned that the other party has now begun to trace the flow of spaceship accessories in the past 2 years. Because Xingchen has bought a lot of small spaceship accessories in recent months, it may be found on Xingchen soon. Gyland can help cover it up, but Huff's side is hard to say. Moreover, Stardust has also bought goods from other channels, so the chance of being exposed is too great. It is best to prepare early. After hearing these words, Xingchen was also speechless. This early preparation, what preparation? I don't have any background here, so what can I do if I let others stare at me? I can only run away. Fortunately, the small spacecraft is almost assembled. Although it is not very stable, it is not difficult to fly to other planets in the near future. But I haven't saved much money in my hand. I really want to go to an alien planet, but it's not easy to mess around. You don't necessarily need to grow your own vegetables over there. Apart from growing vegetables, my own strength is not too strong. If I don't have the strength of the prefecture level, it is very difficult to mix in the interstellar world. After much deliberation, there is nothing Stardust can do. If something like this happens again in 2 or 3 months, Xingchen will definitely pat his ass and leave. At that time, besides being able to pay back the debt owed, Xingchen will still have hundreds of thousands of RALs in his hands. Although this amount of money is not too much, but on the alien planet, you can also exchange some missing parts on the small spaceship. With these parts, the operation of the small spaceship is naturally better and safer. At that time, whether you want to engage in transportation or do other things, it will be much safer. But at this moment, Xingchen only has tens of thousands of RALs in his hands, and he still owes Gerland more than 100,000 RALs, which makes it difficult for him to run away. Of course, if you really want to run away, the money owed by Gylander will be the same if you try to find a way in the future. But Xingchen didn't have much savings in his hand, but it was a terrible thing. Thinking about it gave me a headache, and Xingchen didn't think of any good ideas. The next day, Xingchen wanted to go out to check the situation at noon. As a result, when I left the school gate, I found that there were several unknown persons outside the school monitoring the students entering and leaving the school gate. This made Xingchen's heart skip a beat. Feeling that the situation was not quite right, Xingchen switched to several other school gates, but the result was the same. Someone outside the school gate was monitoring the students going out. This situation made Xingchen even more uneasy. Looking at the other party's arrangement, there are at least 20 people conducting surveillance activities. Then the opponent has at least dozens of subordinates, or even hundreds of subordinates. But relying on my own strength, it is still possible to overturn one or two, and if I have more, I will definitely be a small pickle. It is definitely not enough to fight recklessly, and Xingchen doesn't want to hand himself over to the other party. The conclusion is obvious. Xingdest's best choice now is to run away immediately. After thinking about this, Xingchen went back to school, asked the instructor for a long vacation. The instructor was a little annoyed. After all, they were about to graduate now, and in 3 or 4 months, these students would leave the school. Xingchen asked for leave at this time, and it was still a long vacation. During this time, he couldn't hurry up and train. By the time he graduated, his strength would definitely not be able to keep up. Xingchen also knows that the instructor is doing it for his own good, but someone is looking for trouble for him. If he doesn't leave, then he probably won't be able to leave. Saying goodbye to the annoyed instructor, Xingchen took advantage of the slackness of the watchers and slipped out of the school. Then took the afternoon commute back to the scrapyard. But this time it was a temporary decision to come back, and Dang Dang didn't come to pick him up. Stardust had no choice but to fly back home on the hoverboard. When I got home, it was already late, and the temperature had dropped to close to 0, which made Stardust cold enough. But Xingchen has no choice. Who doesn't want to live comfortably? It's not that others force him to run away. He doesn't want to work so hard. If you're enjoying my content, please consider donating a coffee. Or checking out my shirts on TeePublic. After returning home, Xingchen just rested for a while, and then began to make preparations before running. There is no way, although I don't want to go out so unprepared, but those people who are eyeing me will not give me much time. The spacecraft needed for travel is basically ready, and there may be some lack of safety, but it should be okay to carry yourself to a planet that is not too far away. Diet is not a big problem. I usually bring a lot of food and water home, but now I have to run away. Naturally, there is no need to grow vegetables. Pack these materials for backup first, maybe how long it will take on the road. The most important thing for running is money, but just bought a lot of spaceship accessories a while ago. Now Xingchen doesn't have much cash in his hand. To say that tens of thousands of reals may be considered a huge amount of money for Stardust before, but for Stardust who has built a spaceship and needs to add many accessories, this amount of money is only a small amount. Fortunately, the spaceship is ready to sail, and those accessories can be added slowly. Now Xingchen still has a lot of vegetables in his hands, and these can be exchanged for money. But Huff's place is not very safe, and Gillen's place is also very dangerous. Stardust shipping channels are blocked, and there are so many things in the sky, but they can't be exchanged for cash. There are still some pure metals that can be exchanged for money in Xingchen's house. After so long of collecting, some types of pure metals have almost been collected to a unit. You can receive one piece of these, and exchange them with others in the storage area tomorrow. Maybe you can make a few pieces and sell them for money. Normally, Xingchen would probably look down on this small amount of money, but after the other sources of money are cut off, he can only collect some small money first. There are quite a lot of vegetables grown now, but there is no place to sell them, so Xingchen collected some first. This is to go to the storage area tomorrow to exchange things with others. Of course, other people can also buy it if they pay. In the evening, Xingchen went to the warehouse where the small spacecraft was placed to check again, and after confirming that there was nothing missing, Xingchen asked Walla to put the energy column into the energy warehouse of the spacecraft. Then start the engine of the spaceship according to the procedure. There was nothing wrong with starting the engine, but after starting, how to get outside is still a bit troublesome. Although the exit and passage of this warehouse are relatively large, the spaceship must be enough to enter and exit. But this time, the spaceship is to fly out. The newly installed spaceship has not been debugged yet, and the main control system has not yet been able to control the operation of various components. so the operation of each part of the spaceship will be a bit different. In order to prevent the spaceship from flying and crashing, Xingchen could only change the posture of the spaceship little by little, and then move towards the exit of the warehouse little by little. That's really moving, it only moves a few meters a minute. Slow down, it's better than going too fast and crashing the spaceship. Fortunately, the place where the spaceship was placed was not far from the entrance of the passage, so after spending 20 minutes, the spaceship flew outside, and now I can let myself go. Of course, it didn't fly very far. Stardust just drove the spacecraft to try out the acceleration and deceleration of the operation, then check all the system components installed on the spacecraft again. After such an inspection, Xingchen felt relieved. Although the parts used in this spaceship are all second-hand, when collecting such parts, Rhubarb helped to check the quality, so the quality of those parts is not bad, and there is nothing wrong with assembling the spaceship for test flight. After checking the spaceship, Stardust didn't park the spaceship in the previous warehouse. Those who are staring at themselves don't know what's going on. In case the other party finds any clues, they don't sleep at night to block themselves. If they still live in the house on the other side of the passage, there is really nowhere to run. So tonight, Xingdust slept directly on the small spaceship at the entrance of the passage. Although the outdoor temperature is very low and the outside environment is relatively bad, the spacecraft can navigate in space, and thermal insulation and safety are only one of the very common functions. Spending the night on this planet is not a big deal. Fortunately, nothing happened tonight. When he got up in the morning, Xingchen kept the spaceship on guard at the entrance of the passage, and sent Dang Dang to wait on the spaceship, and drove the spaceship to a height of several hundred meters, looking around for any outsiders coming. I brought Walla to the warehouse at home, and asked Walla to drive out the suspension car, piled up with a lot of pure metal and spaceship accessories. Those spaceship accessories are not suitable for small spaceships, but they usually collect so many, they should not be left here to waste. Not all the spaceship accessories on the hover car, there are a lot of spaceship accessories piled up in Rhubarb space. These Stardust are ready to be taken to aliens to sell. Xingchen went around the house by himself, and finally thought about it, and put the compost bin and the vegetable box for growing red eggplants into the Rhubarb space. Of course, the seeds were also packed in a small bag, and they were divided into 2 small bags with the green vegetable seeds. Xingchen thought for a long time before deciding whether he could try to sell these things with Gylinder. Although he had to take some risks, he didn't have much money with him when he went out, so he really didn't feel safe. After finishing everything, Xingchen took a last look at the house, turned around and left the place where the original body had lived for more than 10 years, and where he had lived for several months. Once outside, Xingchen asked Dang Dang to drive down the spaceship, and then put the spaceship accessories on the hover car into the small cargo compartment of the spaceship. It is a small cargo warehouse. For such a small spaceship at that time, this cargo warehouse can only store a few pieces of the owner's luggage. The total volume is only 7 or 8 cubic meters, which is not as big as that of Rhubarb. There are about 500 or 600 pieces of those accessories, and this small warehouse is full. There are more than 300 pieces in the Rhubarb space. These are the things that can be sold for money after going to an alien planet. As for those vegetables and red eggplants, they are probably relatively scarce and valuable on this planet, but on alien planets, they are probably better than the weeds on the roadside. After finishing all these tasks, Xingchen asked Hua La to drive the hover car to the storage area, while he drove the spaceship to follow in the air. Arriving at the periphery of the storage area, Xingchen first checked the large area around the spaceship for any abnormalities and suspicious persons, and then landed, and took a few younger brothers to the storage area in a hover car. Hula is driving a spaceship to respond outside. The storage area is the same as usual, everyone is busy picking up waste, and the waste transport spaceship did not come today. Stardust found a few acquaintances and exchanged some pure metals, this time enough for 4 units, and the other metals were not enough, so he simply replaced them with spaceship accessories and the like. After such a long exchange, most of the scavengers in this area have accessories that are not suitable for the small spaceship. Xingchen picked out better quality parts and replaced them. After the exchange, Stardust also has some more accessories, and several units of pure metal have been exchanged. Those green vegetables were not exchanged, there is no way. These people don't have much stock in their hands, so they can't give away other people's things for nothing. Of course, those few were really familiar, and Stardust also gave each of them a few slices of green vegetables and 2 red tomato fruits. It's all about thanking the other party for taking care of me for so long. After finishing all this, Xingchen asked someone for the location of the person who made the deal with him before. This group of people is in another area. Although some parts of the engine brought out by the other party in the previous transaction were not usable, the transaction was established. In the end, there was still a batch of goods that were not given to the other party. I am not a person who is short of these things. Just send it to the other party directly. Of course, even if these green vegetables were not given to the other party would not be recruited, but Xingchen didn't want to do that kind of unscrupulous thing, so as not to make people poke the spine and scold him. Xingchen and Dang Dang came to the outskirts in a suspension car, joined Walla, and drove all the way to the scrap yard. Stardust found someone to sell the pure metal here, and got more than 6,000 RAL. This is because one of the metals has a higher price, otherwise it would not be able to sell so much. After selling the metals, Xingchen asked Hua La to disassemble the hover car. The entire suspension car is too big to fit on the spaceship, and such a big thing cannot fit into the space of rhubarb. However, when disassembled, the volume occupied by this suspension car is much smaller. Stardust brought this levitation car in case it was of any use in the future, so keep it for now. After putting away the levitation car, Xingchen drove the spaceship to the area where he made a deal with before. Those people are still picking up waste in a dumping area. Seeing a small spaceship approaching, many people stopped working and gathered together in case something happened. Stardust lowered the spaceship, and after a search, he found the second child he was trading with. The second in command in that gang was also shocked when he found out that the person who came was Xingchen, who made the deal before. How long has it been since the engine was traded before Stardust assembled the spaceship? How is this possible? But Xingchen's small spaceship stopped in midair, he couldn't help but believe it. Xingchen explained the purpose of coming, saying that he came to deliver the last batch of goods. After that, I will leave, and I will not be here in the future. Then Xingchen said that he still has a lot of vegetables and red tomato fruits here. If they have good spaceship accessories, they can exchange some now. Those people were naturally a little moved when they heard this, but it's not long since everyone started working, and there are not many ready-made accessories in hand. So many people greeted and hurried home, ready to pick up accessories and exchange things. Stardust first handed over the batch of goods owed to the other party, and then exchanged things with the scavengers who came back one after another. Of course, Xingchen was not that familiar with these people, so he had to be on guard, so the exchange was carried out by a robot hundreds of meters away. After staying in this storage area for 2 hours, Xingchen exchanged more than 370 pieces of spaceship accessories with vegetables and tomato fruits. This is not a small number. You must know that Stardust has changed many times with the scavengers in his own area, and almost all of them have been changed. Now that the green vegetables in Xingchen's hands have been replaced, there are still more than 20 red eggplants. The accessories in those people's hands were almost finished, so Stardust didn't stop there, and drove the small spaceship to the scrapyard. Stardust came to the scrapyard to send a message to Gylinder. On this planet, the communication signal is not fully covered, only the urban area and a few places such as the scrapyard mine have communication signals. Stardust wants to contact Gylinder, but he can only go to a place with a signal. Of course, if Stardust drives the spaceship to the edge of the city, he can also contact Gylinder, but the city is mixed with fish and dragons. Who knows if there are any eyeliners in the patrol team near the edge of the city who are looking for troublesome people? It would be embarrassing if Gylinder arrived first. So Stardust sent a message to Gylinder at the scrapyard. The content of the message is still the same as last time, it is to buy small spaceship accessories. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, Gylinder sent a message back, to the effect that the forces that are eyeing this matter are now pursuing it very closely. Because the school is surrounded by powerful forces, those people cannot enter. But Huff was watched by people, including those near the other black shops, who were also watching. I'm afraid it's impossible to sell goods in the city now. Stardust replied to the message expressing understanding. Then asked Gilland if he can go out of the city to trade outside. Gilland replied that 1 or 2 boxes of red eggplant fruit can't stand the risk, it's better to wait a month later, and it's safer to trade when things calm down. Shinchan replied directly, I have a batch of things to sell here. The last time I bought accessories, I was short of more than 100,000 reals. This batch is quite a lot. In addition to the payment, there should be a lot of wealth. I want to change it into money and send it elsewhere for emergency use. After a pause, Gilland replied, since the quantity is not small, it is worth trading once. Do you want to go elsewhere? Is there a spaceship that can take you away? Or is your spaceship finished? Stardust replied, it's just that I recently bought a spaceship with a lot of accessories installed. Now the short-distance flight should not be a big problem. Unfortunately, the spaceship is too small to hold too many things. Gilland replied, you are not bad. It is extremely difficult for those forces to build a spaceship. Sometimes it takes a few years of work, but it may not be successful. You have not been buying spaceship accessories for a long time, right? This will be able to fly, and if the higher-ups of those forces know about this, I am afraid they will chase you even more. After saying this, Gilland asked where Stardust was going to trade. Stardust thought of a place, more than 10 kilometers away from an entrance and exit of the city. Then told Gilland the coordinates of this place, and made an appointment to meet. Gilland replied yes, and ended the contact. Stardust waited at the scrapyard for an hour, and then drove the small spaceship to the city area. There will be more than half an hour before the meeting time. But Shinchan doesn't know much about the safety situation around the city, so he wants to go and check the surroundings early, so as not to run away accidentally. On this planet, except for the large basin where the urban area is located, there is no pile of scrap metal garbage. Other areas are piled up with layers of various metal products. The thickness of these metal wastes can range from hundreds of meters to hundreds or even thousands of meters. I don't know how long it took to accumulate to form such a scale. When he arrived at the appointed place, Shinchan drove the small spaceship to check the nearby terrain and various hidden places. Except for the patrol team, there should be very few people passing by here. The patrol team didn't walk here every day. Looking from a high place, it was full of metal waste. During the period, a few goats passed by, but there were not many things that could be eaten by goats, so even the goats' rats rarely stop here. Stardust looked around, and then chose a higher place to stop the spaceship, but the spaceship is still ready to take off at any time. He chose a high place, because he had a better view, but Stardust didn't intend to trade at a high place. Stardust asked Huala to take the hover car out of the spaceship, and then reinstalled it, just waiting quietly for Gillander to come over. At the appointed time, a suspension vehicle drove over from a distance. There were a total of 3 people on the hover car, which made Shinchan a little vigilant. When they got closer, Shinchan recognized one of them as Gillander, and the other 2 had also met at the previous auction, and they were both Gillander's younger brothers. When the opponent's hover car was closer, Shinchan took out the vegetable planting box and the composting box from the rhubarb space. In addition, there are 2 small bags of seeds, which are placed on the floating car that is driving along with the rest of the red eggplant fruit. Then Shinchan ordered Walla to drive the suspension car to the low valley below the high place, and then signaled Gilland that the transaction will be carried out over there. This is Shinchan's precautionary measure when he sees that the other party has 3 people coming. But even if the other party only comes to Gillander, Shinchan will do the same. Gillander is relatively powerful, and he has seen blood when he was in an alien world. If the other party has any bad thoughts at this time, it will be Shinchan himself who will be unlucky. Although Gilland usually looks good, but a spaceship is at least several million reals, who knows if the other party will make a move with envy. Now Stardust arranges the transaction in a low-lying place, which is more than 100 meters away from Stardust's spaceship, and it's still a slope, with many obstacles. Even if the opponent wanted to make a move, it would take several seconds to get to Xingqian's side. With this time, Xingqian could close the barn door and take off. Of course, if this happens, the crash and the suspension car will be lost. For those vegetables and the like, there is no stardust planting method, and at most some immature fruits can be harvested, which is nothing. Seeing Xingqian's arrangement like this, Gylander didn't say anything, but just drove the hover car to Xingqian's hover car. Crash moved the compost box and the vegetable planting box to Gyland's suspension car, and then put all the other bits and pieces on his car. Gyland looked at the two boxes, and opened the smaller compost box first. The contents made Gyland frown. But I don't know what this thing is for. But when Gylander opened the largest vegetable growing box, he was really surprised. The big box that Gylander opened was for solanum, and inside were 3 batches of solanum plants of different sizes. At this time, 2 batches of plants have already produced fruit, and the latest plant is about to bloom. Gyland checked other things. Except for the red tomato fruit, he had quoted the price before, and the other things were not very easy to estimate. To put it bluntly, those 2 boxes are also made of metal, and the sand and gravel inside are not worth a few reals. Those seeds might be worth some money, but that depends on who owns them. It seems that the red eggplant plants are the most valuable. If they really grow, the red eggplant fruit produced will not be a problem to sell for 200,000 to 300,000 reals. But, this value is not calculated in this way. You must know that on this planet, these vegetables are all imported from alien planets. It's not that they don't want to plant here. Those big forces have also invested a lot of manpower and material resources in research in this area, but they all failed in the end. Even those people transported a large amount of soil from alien planets and took care of it carefully. Those imported vegetables still don't give face, the ones that should wither are withered, and the roots that should be rotten are rotten. But in this box, there are only some thin sand and stones inside, but the vegetables grow very vigorously. If those powerful people knew about this, wouldn't they be pissed off? Gyland sighed after reading these things, and said to Xingqian, "You guys are hard to value. So many people have spent a lot of effort, but failed to grow this thing. You take a metal box and add it, you can get some sand and gravel out. I really don't know where you learned the method." Xingqian thought, this is my racial talent as a Chinese, even if I tell you, you won't understand. Gyland said again, after you brought the red tomato fruit, I also checked your channel, but those spaceships that can bring goods back from outside, no one can take it out and sell it privately. And your red tomato fruit, the taste is different from the ones coming in from outside. At that time, I guessed that your red tomato fruit was probably grown by myself. But I couldn't believe it at the time, someone could actually grow this stuff. Until now I saw these things, I was convinced that these red eggplants were really grown by you. Xingqian just nodded after hearing this. Well, it's not difficult to grow this thing, it's just a random variety. If you give me more time, I can save money and buy a bigger spaceship. Gyland was speechless. What do you mean it's not difficult to grow this thing? It is not difficult for those people to spend a lot of manpower and material resources to accomplish something that is impossible for you. You want to piss people off. But Xingqian didn't have time to chat with him, he just asked Gyland to estimate the price as soon as possible. Gyland was a little embarrassed, this meal was different. If you bring a batch of red eggplants here, the price will be quoted immediately. But this is the method of growing red eggplants. If you really learn this set of methods, you will be able to produce a batch of red eggplants every day in the future. How much money will you make by then? After all, this planting method is really valuable. With a cruel heart, Gyland took out all the lol in the bag, and then asked the little brother next to him how much money he had to take out together. In the end, the 3 of them pooled 420,000 lol. Then Gyland said to Stardust, I have 420,000 reals on hand. When we go back, I'll get you some more in 2 days. What do you think? Stardust thought for a while, and 420,000 laras was already quite a lot. Besides, he owed Gyland more than 100,000 laras before. With this offset, it was 600,000 laras. If you wait here for 2 days in order to ask for more money, in case something happens again, it will be useless. So he said, "These money plus the ones owed to you before, it is the price of these goods. The rest is ignored. I am in a hurry to leave, I can't stay longer." After hearing what Shinchan said, Gillen didn't say anything else. "Just put those rails on Stardust's levitating vehicle." Shinchan asked Hua La to drive the suspension car back, and the deal was completed. Of course, Stardust took the money, and the planting method was still unclear from beginning to end. Usually, things like how to compost and water, the duration of light and temperature settings, etc., must be detailed. When the money was confiscated before, in order to prevent Gilland from turning his face, Shinchan did not explain these things. At this time, Law has already obtained it, so it is natural to explain these things clearly. Otherwise, Gilland took the vegetable growing box and still couldn't grow anything, then he would have to curse behind his back. Just as Stardust sent a message to Gillander about all the precautions here, Rhubarb suddenly warned, saying that the radar-like scanner on the spaceship found 3 hovering vehicles flying over from the city. There were at least 20 people, and they came very quickly. They would arrive at the location of the spaceship within a minute. Shinchan doubted that Gillander had missed the news, but now that the money has been obtained, it doesn't matter if the other party comes again. However, Shinchan still warned Gillander, telling him that someone was coming from that direction of the city. Gilland was also taken aback when he heard the news, and hurriedly told Shinchan to leave. The people who came over there were afraid that they were not kind. They should have been discovered when they left the city just now. In the absence of patrols outside the city here, those people have no scruples in attacking them. Stardust nodded, and then told Gilland which direction to walk to avoid the other party. There are quite a few obstacles in the area that Stardust is pointing to. If you turn around from there and head towards the city, it will happen to be staggered with the 3 hovering vehicles coming. At this time, Hua La had already disassembled the suspension vehicle and put it back on the spaceship. Stardust brought Hua La onto the spaceship, waved his hand to Gillander to say goodbye, then closed the door, drove the spaceship away. Gilland saw Shinchan leaving, so the 3 of them also hurriedly boarded the suspension vehicle and flew towards the direction Shinchan said. Anyway, there are all kinds of uneven metal scraps around here. As long as they fly low and go around for a certain distance, it will not be easy for the other party to find them again. Shinchan drove the small spaceship without rushing directly into outer space, but first flew hundreds of kilometers away from the ground, and then increased the power of the engine and flew towards the starry sky. In doing so, they would be discovered by those people later, leaving enough time for the 3 of Gilland to leave. Secondly, there may be some prevention and control facilities or weapons in the urban area. If you give yourself a guy indiscriminately, it will be a big loss. Now running hundreds of kilometers away like this, the risk of being attacked by defensive weapons is greatly reduced. When Stardust Carriage drove the small spaceship out of the planet and turned the bow to look at the planet that had lived for several months, he just sighed slightly, and he didn't mean to give up. After all, it has only been a few months since he traveled here, so there is nothing to miss in such a place full of scraps. Looking at the planet from outer space, the entire planet has a mottled and irregular shape. The stars have not yet turned to the other side, so the light on this side of the planet is still relatively strong. It's just that the entire planet is covered by various waste metals. Although the oxygen content on the planet is insufficient, various metal products oxidize slowly. But after so many years, the area where scrap metal has been piled up in the past century will reflect the light of the stars, while other places are foggy, just like the dusty surface of Common. In the past, Stardust was active on the surface of the planet. This is the first time to look down on a planet from space. And before crossing over, he had never observed a planet in this way. But the planet in front of me really has nothing to see, no water, no plants, no various landscape buildings. Only a piece of gray. All kinds of rusted metal garbage. So Shinchan only took a few glances, then turned around the direction of the spaceship, aimed at the coordinates of a star and started to accelerate. This star coordinate is one of the star coordinates collected by Stardust from various channels, and it is located in the main channel of interstellar navigation. There should be a large population on this planet, and all kinds of resources and facilities should be relatively complete. Now Stardust's small spaceship has not yet been completed, and nearly 1,000 parts are missing. It's not that Xingqian doesn't want to complete the spaceship, but that these parts can't be found. There are quite a few accessories, which cannot be found on that junk star. So the first stop of Stardust's current plan is the main channel planet in the interstellar voyage. Presumably there should be enough spaceship accessories to buy here. The acceleration time of this voyage is more than 6 hours, which is a bit long. There is no way. Stardust's spaceship is a low-level small spaceship, the power of its own engine is not too big, and now Stardust is still using a second-hand engine, let alone the power. Besides, even if the power is enough, Xingqian doesn't dare to accelerate too fast. The life support system and recoil leveling system installed by Stardust on the spaceship are all simplified versions, which means that there will be some lack of functions. If the acceleration and deceleration are too fast, people may die. So Xingqian would rather spend more time now, but also ensure his own safety. The entire voyage is more than 6 hours during the acceleration process, and more than 6 hours during the deceleration process, and the intermediate voyage time is only 3.5 hours. That's it. The time it takes to accelerate and decelerate is longer than the sailing time. The spaceship has some rubbish, so it can only fly like this. After the acceleration is completed, the small spacecraft reaches 1.05 times the speed of light. At this time, the spaceship has entered the dimensional space. The level of the spaceship is not high, and its performance is too poor, so the dimensional space it can enter is not deep. At most, it is the surface layer just entering the dimensional space. Keep flying at the speed of light here for 1 year, which is about 100,000 years in the outside world. Probably this ratio. If you sail into a deeper dimensional space, you can get a bigger ratio. That is to say, if you go deep, sailing in the corresponding dimensional space for 1 year will take more time than flying in the outside world. For example, it is equivalent to flying in the outside world for hundreds of thousands or even millions of years. But don't even think about Stardust's spaceship, this spaceship is very common. Being able to fly at the speed of light and enter the dimensional space is already its greatest ability. If you want to go deeper, it may disintegrate. Stardust also knows this, so he is very satisfied to maintain the current sailing state. Satisfied is satisfied. The voyage of more than 10 hours is also very difficult. This spaceship is a very small spaceship, and the entire cockpit plus the rest area is only about 10 square meters in total. Now these 10 square meters are not empty. There are also some replaced spaceship accessories piled up on the ground in the rest area. The ones I took at home were put in the warehouse, and here are the accessories that I just exchanged with green vegetables and scavengers in the nearby area. On the entire spacecraft, the area where Stardust can move is only about 6 square meters. This area also includes the control seat of the mainframe driver. Now Xingqian wants to stand up and move around, but he can't stretch it. He had no choice but to sit on the control seat and ask De Huang to project some information about alien planets into his mind. It was a little bit of knowledge, so that he would not have to go to alien planets and make jokes. After more than 10 hours like this, Xingqian became dizzy from reading the information. Fortunately, the destination is finally here. The spaceship has already decelerated, but it still maintains a certain speed. Stardust looked it up on the spacecraft's search system. It seems to be a little off course. Originally, the expected arrival location was hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from that planet. In this case, Xingqian could fly the spaceship for another 10 minutes to reach the place. But now Xingqian discovered that the distant planet would take more than 2 hours to fly over. Why? Who told me to use second-hand goods? This deviation is normal. This distance is far away, close or not. Fly at the speed of light, the acceleration and deceleration time will take more than 10 hours, it is better to fly directly. Stardust had no choice but to fly the spaceship towards the planet ahead. More than 2 hours passed, and Stardust finally approached the planet. This is a khaki planet, and there is no large water surface on the planet. This planet is not too far from the star, so it seems that the climate is relatively hot, and there are no obvious man-made objects. Stardust is a little confused. Can such a planet be regarded as having a large population? This is not the same as the data. Could it be that the people on this planet live underground? After the Stardust carrier flew the spacecraft around the planet, it was discovered that in the high-dimensional area of the planet, there was a place that seemed to be artificially opened. It seems that we can only go to this place to see what's going on. The Stardust carrier drove the spaceship to the place that seemed to be artificially opened. From space, this is just a small area. But in fact, this place is hundreds of kilometers square. That is, an area of tens of thousands of square kilometers. However, although the area is large, there are actually only a few places where there are buildings, and the other places are just some artificial traces on the ground. Stardust saw spaceships and some mechanical vehicles parked outside a building in that area. So the spaceship was lowered. When Xingchen parked the spaceship outside the building, two people came out of the building and walked towards Xingchen. Stardust was thinking about asking about the situation here. So he got off the spaceship and waited for those two people to come over. These two are wearing uniform-style protective clothing, but they are not military uniforms, but more like clothing prepared by some administrative agencies. Sure enough, after Xingchen asked, he found out that these two people are interstellar observers of the universe kingdom in this area, responsible for monitoring the development of these nearby planets. One of these two people is called Popa, and the other is called Suadu. Apart from the two of them, there are some low-life forms on this planet who are struggling to survive. Xingchen asked Popa what was going on here. Why did he come to a prosperous airway planet, but found a desolate planet with only two people? Popa felt a little strange, so he asked which planet Stardust wanted to go to. When Xingchen mentioned the name of the place, Popa burst out laughing. After laughing for a while, Popa told Xingchen that he came to the wrong place. The planet that Stardust wants to go to is about 17 light-years away. That side is the interstellar channel, and their side belongs to the unexplored planet beside the channel. The reason why the observation point is set up on this planet is because the cost of setting it up here is low. Stardust was a little speechless. The small spaceship he built used a lot of second-hand parts, but these second-hand parts were too unreliable. This shell was more than 10 light-years away. But after finally meeting people outside, Xingchen chatted with Popa for a while. These two probably rarely see outsiders, so they are more enthusiastic when they meet Xingchen, and they try their best to answer some questions about Xingchen. After chatting for about half an hour, Xingchen finally figured out the situation in the nearby area. Of course, this kind of clarification is only a rough understanding, but it also allows Xingchen to have a certain plan for the next voyage. After chatting, Xingchen was about to leave. But before leaving, Stardust bought 2 energy pillars for the small spaceship from Popa and the others. The 2 energy pillars that Xingdu's small spaceship bought before have been used for about 1/3 after this flight. Although the distance to that railroad planet is not far, Stardust can't guarantee whether the spacecraft will go off course again. If it misses again, the next planet to arrive will be a waste planet with no one left. Then Stardust has to catch shrimps. The price of the energy pillars these two sold to Xingchen is not high, but the energy pillars on their side are shared, not the energy points outside that can be added casually. Selling 2 to Stardust is already the limit. With 2 more energy pillars in Xingchen's hands, he also has confidence in his heart. Now even if the spaceship uses 2 or 3 times, it is enough to fly to a human planet. Saying goodbye to the Popa duo, Xingchen drove the small spaceship to the starry sky again. The place to go this time is only 17 light-years away, but if you want to go there, you have to accelerate to the speed of light. This acceleration still takes more than 6 hours. After the acceleration is completed and it enters the dimensional space, the actual flight time here is less than half an hour. Then Stardust started to slow down time again. Another nearly 6 hours. This time, Stardust had better luck. Coming out of the dimensional space, Stardust found the target planet through the spacecraft's detection system. This spaceship is not too far from that planet, and it takes about 40 minutes to fly there. Seeing that this was the case, Xingchen felt relieved. These tens of minutes were still tolerable. When Xingchen drove the spacecraft to the side of the planet, the small spacecraft received an inquiry message, which was to ask Xingdust the reason why the spacecraft came here, whether it was to rest or refuel, or other things. Xingchen had never encountered such a thing before, but it was probably just a routine inquiry, so he told the truth that he wanted to buy some accessories and repair the spaceship. After hearing Xingchen's explanation, the other party sent Xingchen a location coordinate, which contained the location of the store and the berthing information of the spaceship. Then the other party sent Xingchen some details about parking charges, as well as the status and introduction of some accommodation businesses. What does this mean? Why is it still sending out advertisements? But looking at the introduction above, this charge is acceptable for Stardust's pocket. It's just that there is no way to sell green vegetables now, and the lol in the pocket is one less. Don't worry about anything else. The spaceship of the Stardust frame will come to the location of the shop first. This is an area over 1 square kilometer in size. Surrounded by metal walls, there is a relatively large building near the door, and the rest of the place is filled with large and small spaceships, and some large spaceship accessories are placed in the open space. However, there is an obvious parking place next to the building. Stardust drove the spaceship to a stop. Before the spacecraft came to a complete stop, a person ran out of the building, very warmly greet the direction of Stardust's small spaceship. The service attitude here seems to be good. But it's much better than Gillen's black shop. Stardust parked the spaceship, and then came out from the warehouse door. Standing on the ground of this planet, I took a deep breath. Good. The air composition on this planet is very suitable for human needs. And Xingchen could feel that there was a trace of aura in the air he inhaled into his lungs. Although it's not a lot, but compared to the air on the waste star that doesn't contain any psionic energy, this place is quite good. Seeing Xingchen coming out of the spaceship, the visitor greeted him very warmly. Guests from afar, is there anything I can offer you? But before Xingchen could reply, the visitor covered his nose with his hands, looked at Xingchen and said, "My guest, where did you come from? Why do you have a strange smell?" Forehead. What strange smell? Xingchen raised his arm and smelled it himself. No smell. Why does this man say that? Fortunately, the person who came here didn't pay more attention to this matter, probably because he thought it was very impolite. Just keep smiling and ask Stardust what he wants to buy here. Xingchen pointed to his spaceship, and said that he wanted to buy some suitable accessories for the small spaceship. This person invited Xingchen to the room to talk in detail. He also introduced himself as the owner of the shop, and his name is Sakiya. Sakiya told Xingchen that his store specializes in various spaceship accessories, and of course it also includes spaceship maintenance. On this planet, my store is considered the biggest and best. Xingchen just listened to these words. No one has time to go to other shops for a walk. Entering the shop in Sajiya, Xingchen took a look around and found that the space here is really big, but most of the places are piled up with various types of spaceship accessories. In terms of the number of accessories, it is better to pick up here than yourself. The quantity is large for decades. With such a large quantity, it seems that there are quite a few accessories on the small spaceship. Although it's hard to say whether we can make it all together, at least there will be more than now. Shajia asked Xingchen to sit down in a place with a better environment, and then a waitress came over with drinks and the like. Although this waitress didn't quite fit Xingchen's vision, she was not Xingchen's own waiter, so she didn't need to ask for much. The waitress came to Xingchen, smiled and put the drink on the table in front of Xingchen. Just as he was about to speak, he immediately covered his nose with his hand, and then said, "My guest, where did you come from? Why do you have a strange smell?" Forehead. If one person said this, why did the second person also say the same thing? Xingchen raised his arm and smelled it again, but he still didn't smell anything. So he asked the waitress, "What's the smell on me?" How strange. Seeing that Xingchen didn't look angry, the waitress said, "How should I put it? It's like the smell of rusted metal, soaked in various oils. and then dried under the light of the stars for a long time. Xingqian felt a little overwhelmed when he heard this. The smell of rusty metal is understandable, since I was born on the waste product star, isn't it, because there are the most metal waste products of all kinds? It's not surprising to have the smell. Now I can smell this kind of smell on my body. I am afraid that I have been in that environment for a long time. The rusty smell of metal has penetrated into the flesh, it is marinated. It's almost like a girl who wears too much perfume, and the same pickled smell in her body. But what the hell is it exposed after soaking in oil? How could I volatilize that smell? Could it be that it has something to do with the fact that I have never taken a bath and only use a bath cloth to wipe myself? If this is the case, I have to quickly find a place to take a bath. Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.